Hello ladies and gentlemen, Xandora here, and welcome back to another video. Now I hope all of you are doing well, because I am as always. But in today's YouTube video, we'll be comparing the Boeing 747. So we've got three variants here, the 747, 200, 400 and 800. We'll be comparing the 800 to the Airbus A380-800. Now these aircraft are relatively similar with capacity and length, but we do need to be aware that the 747 has a few more variants of infinite flight. Now the main objective here is to compare them in Infinite Flight Mobile Flight Simulator and also compare them in real life to see what aircraft is really the aircraft you want to be choosing for your flights in Infinite Flight. So let's start off with the A380. You can see right here there's already a load of liveries, maybe 15, not far from 20 liveries here maybe. And there are a lot of options. Now we're going to use today, let's use Singapore Airlines because I don't use this livery very often. And let's head over to Singapore, why not? So it's right down there. Now, the A380 is a phenomenal aircraft in Infinite Flight. It's one of the most popular aircraft, it's one of my most favourite aircraft, and I think it's amazing. And it's very well known, you know, for having two complete decks of passengers. Now that is crazy if you ask me. It's something we don't see very often. So yeah, it's amazing. So you can see here just how big this aircraft is. Like, look at those wings. This thing is a mammoth. There's no really getting around it. This aircraft is massive. Now, talking about its infinite flight features first, before we get into a little bit of comparison, you can see that we go in the cockpit, and the cockpit is very much meh. You know, not even the throttle there moves. I don't know if the flap things work either. No, we don't have any moving flaps. I think the gear thing actually works as though if we go on short final and try and bring our gear up. No, so we don't actually have a live working cockpit. We've got just 2D like stickers everywhere. It's a very meh cockpit. It's definitely on the lower standard of Infinite Flight cockpits. So we have spoken many a times about getting a cockpit rework. Now, you can see here the exterior details of the aircraft. Again, they're lacking. They're very basic. And the A380 here is just, yeah, it's not really cutting it, unfortunately, for Infinite Flight. It doesn't even have an interior. Now, we have spoken previously in other videos, and make sure you go watch them about A380 reworks, so you can find that on the channel. I didn't make it too long ago. But just imagine a full interior in the A380. That would lag us all out so much. It would be crazy. Now, the A380. It was, when it was introduced, many people did think it would be the end of the jumbo jets, so they thought it would pretty much put the 747 into extinction, and personally I don't really think that would have happened. But the A380, a fully loaded 800 seater, so you can almost fit not far from 1,000 people squished into this tiny little thing. Now if you ask me, that's pretty crazy. Now the 747-8 is the most up-to-date version of the Boeing one, and it's pretty much the most up-to-date competitor really to the A380. Now I know in real life I'm not too sure whether the A380 was designed to compete with the 747 due to different aircraft models. So I believe it's like the hub and spoke model and another aircraft model that airlines believe in. And basically, some airlines believe in hubs, which is perfect for the A380. So you fly lots of aircraft into one airport and then fly out of there. So that's very useful for exchange flights with layovers. So imagine like London Heathrow, British Airways fly everyone to Heathrow, and then you fly out of Heathrow, which makes the A380 very good. Or even better, Emirates are a good example of that. Or there's the other airline model, which budget airlines mainly use, such as EasyJet and Ryanair, where you just fly from A to B. You don't normally go to somewhere else, which makes the Airbus A320 family or the 737 family ideal for those models. Now, the A380 is perfect for airlines like Emirates, where they like to fly mass people to Dubai. Sorry. Now, you can tell that with the A380 here in Infinite Flight, it's a great aircraft altogether. Now, you can see, I mean, it's a little bit lacking, but it's a great aircraft, and we do like it in general. Now, let's have a look at the 747, shall we? Now, we will be comparing it to the 747-800, which is the big one. We have so many 747s. This big boy, which has literally, I would like to say maybe the same amount of liveries. Now, most of these are cargos, other than Lufthansa, the Infinite Flight, Korean. Oh, we'll be using that in this video. There's the Air China, So there are a few liveries here which are for cargo, but we'll go with Korean Air for this purpose, shall we? We have nothing to lose. Now, the 747 has been known for being massive. It's iconic with the big hump, so you got, you know, the partially double deck. It is a very well known and a very iconic aircraft, and I think globally it's pretty well known, probably one of the most famous aircraft out there. Anyone can identify 747 pretty much, just because of the way it looks, and this aircraft, it's just a whole different breed. Now, we can tell here in Infinite Flight, the exterior of the aircraft is still a bit tacky. I wouldn't say it's any better than the A380 exterior, but I don't think it's any worse. So I think when we look at the exterior features, I think they're pretty much on par with each other. Now, when we do go in here, there again is no interior, but there is a cockpit, which we can have a look at here. Now, you'll find that here in the cockpit, the stuff in the cockpit actually works and moves. So the flaps works, that throttle stick there works, and the gear up stick also works, which is there. So we'll just show you that on short final, and I'll just pop up the gear. You can see it works. So it is pretty decent. Now, I haven't done the landing test, so we'll do that now. Actually, we didn't do it in the A380. We'll pop out there in a second. But the aircraft itself, the 747, is quite an alright aircraft to fly. I feel like it should feel a lot heavier than it actually does in Infinite Flight. But it's okay. It's quite a nice aircraft to land. It's not too bad. You see, we are landing very fast here. Gonna have to use our rudder a bit, but there we go. We made it, and it's all right. Okay, it's an okay aircraft to land. We'll quickly do the A380 as well, so we don't forget for their comparison. There it is. We'll do Air Austral now. And 747 itself, we'll just talk about this. So the A380 and 747 both need a cockpit crew of 2, which isn't that much. I thought it'd be actually a bit bigger than that. And their typical capacities is 410 on the 787 using a 3-class configuration, and the A380 is 555, which is a lot. And I think the exit limit being the maximum amount of passengers, A380 is 853. Now that is a lot, only 147 short of 1,000 there, and that was an alright aircraft to land. We're a little bit off centre line, but I don't think it's any harder to land than the 747. But I always do prefer the 747 when doing landings. Now, where is the 747? Here it is. Korean Airlines. Now, the 747 though has a maximum limit of 605 passengers. So it's a lot of people that you can fit. But with regards to passengers, the A380 definitely wins with the limit. Now, the interior of these aircraft are very different. Now, the 747 was known as Delta had the first in-flight penthouse, just a fun fact, and they had it on the hump of one of their 747s. Obviously, it was like 747-200, one of the more older variants. It wasn't this giant beast here we got, but it's pretty cool. But then, when you think about Emirates and that with their A380, some of their first class stuff are amazing. Emirates are very well known for their A380 suites. So I think the A380s do have better interiors, mainly being to them being much more modern. So I think that's very fair enough. Now, the A380 has a smaller cargo volume, only by 0.8 meters cubed. So they pretty much have the same amount of cargo volume beneath the bodies of these aircraft. And the 747, in fact, here is about 8 meters longer, like I said, than the A380, which is crazy. It's got a smaller cabin width though, the 747, unfortunately, and you can tell in Infinite Flight it's a lot more narrow, this aircraft, than the A380. And in height-wise, it is a bit higher than the A380, even though it doesn't seem it in the simulator. Although the A380 though does have a much greater maximum takeoff weight and maximum payload, which makes it ideal for carrying many people, of course, and lots of heavy goods. So I think all in all here, I think the 747 definitely winner, and which is probably why it's used so widely for airlines such as cargo airlines. Now, with range, fuel and capacity, the A380 has a larger fuel capacity. It has a slower cruise speed, and its maximum cruise speed though is slower. It does have a greater range though, by not far from 1,000 kilometers, and they both have the maximum ceiling of 43,000 feet. although the 747 is 43,100, but pretty much the same thing. Now, the A380 uses Rolls-Royce engines, and the 747 uses some GE GenX 2B engines, which are pretty powerful, even though they're tiny little things, bless them. Now, fuel efficiency, it's kind of weird because, funny enough, despite the 747 being so much older, both aircraft have matching fuel efficiencies. So therefore, fuel efficiency would not be any reason for any operator to not choose the 747 instead of the A380, which I think is quite fun and interesting. Now, 747s have had 1,573 orders, which is 30 per year since its first flight in 1968. That's crazy. Whereas the A380 has had 251, which is an average of 30 per year since its first flight in 2007. So the A380 was, I believe, cancelled and no longer being produced. But I think all in all, the 747, it's proven itself of worth over 40, nearly 50 years. So I think it's definitely a winner in real life. But when we look at infinite flight, I think it's a winner as well, to be honest. It's not used as often. The A380 is obviously much more popular, but I think the cockpit is really the main thing that makes it different. We've got a cockpit here in infinite flight, and the infinite flight cockpit in the 747 is better than the A380 cockpit. Other than that, they all have the same matching features. I mean, there's a few more views here on the 747, but I think the only thing that sets them apart in infinite flight really is the liveries. So if you were wanting to be flying with Emirates here, then you would choose the A380. But if you wanted British Airways, you've got both. I'd probably choose the 747 because I think the British Airways 747 just looks a little bit cooler than the A380. So with regards to livery, you can see on the other two variants as well. So therefore, in infinite flight, I definitely make the 747 the winner. Now, if you do agree with me, let me know down below. And more importantly, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure you like and subscribe. But other than that, I'll see you in my next video. Good night.
Find your way.